There's something in my room, and I'm sure of it. He's standing in the corner by my closet, and he's draped in black. I sit in bed and I switch on the lamp on the nightstand. Nothing happens. He's moving towards me now, phantom-like, his feet making no noise on the carpet. I push back against the wall behind me and I glance at the digital clock below the lamp. It reads 8:88 in solid red lines. The figure is at the foot of my bed now. In the light coming from the window, I see he is clothed in a black robe with a large hood, and the shadows fall just right so I can't see his face. He holds something in front of him, and against my every instinct, I lean forward to get a better look at him. It's a spoon. A large antique spoon, rusted brownish red, its edge jagged and deteriorating. I wake up breathing heavy and panicky. It's still dark. The clock reads 3:18. I sit up and flip the lamp switch and the light fills the room. There's no one there. Just me in my empty room. It was the dream again. The same dream I've been having for a week. Each night he came a little closer to the bed, but this was the first time that he'd shown me the spoon. I work, or rather, I used to work as an archivist in a museum, specializing in historic medieval books on alchemy, magic, and the occult. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. My job consisted of digitizing old books so that scholars around the world could work on translations, or use the books as a resource, without having to physically come to the museum. It was monotonous work. Pull the book from the shelves, enter some information into the computer system, scan each page of the book, and then skim through the high-resolution digital images and make sure I got a clear capture of each page. You do that for 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, and believe me, you get extremely bored. After just a few weeks of this work, I barely even saw the pages anymore and performed the task mindlessly and robotically. On the night that the dream first started, I had spent the day scanning books like usual. Around 6 o'clock, I took a bathroom break and I threw away my gloves in the receptacle outside the restroom like normal. I had already done 5 or 6 books that day and I was looking forward to going home. When I got back to my desk, I saw that the box of new gloves was empty and all the extras were locked up in the supply closet. It was totally against protocol, but I only had an hour left and I was exhausted, so instead of tracking down someone with a key to the closet, I just proceeded without gloves and I pulled the next book. The last one of the day. I remember it being an unusually large book, about 2 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide. And I swear that I felt an intense foreboding when I plucked it from the shelf. But I shook it out of my mind and I got back to work so I could go home for the day. I went through the motions. Flip page, enter info, and then scan. Flip page, enter info, and then scan. Flip page. What the hell? My breath caught in my throat. On the page before me was the skin of a human face. It was thin, worn, brown and leathery like a mask. The rest of the pages behind the face were sealed together and a hole was cut out between the cracked lips. And set into the book was a full set of human teeth, smiling wickedly. There were holes gouged in the book for eyes as well, but these were empty black pits. Looking at the page made me feel sick to my stomach, and now I suddenly understood why the always wear gloves rule was in place. I had just touched the leathered skin of a dead person. God only knows how old it was. I felt the bile back down my throat and I quickly scanned the page, saved the image, and reshelved the book. Then I clocked out for the day and I went home, feeling sick the rest of the evening. That night, the dream started. After having the same nightmare 3 nights in a row, the hooded figure slowly gliding across the room, I finally admitted to myself that the dreams must be somehow related to the book that I'd found. The next day I went back to the shelves to grab the book, to study its contents, and maybe figure out what was causing these dreams. But the book was gone. The place I had returned it to was now an empty hole on the shelf. I frantically searched the shelves above it, around it, and below it, but it was nowhere to be seen. I panicked for a few moments, but then I regained my composure. It was probably just a mistake. I had reshelved it in the wrong place in my exhaustion, or maybe a researcher was in the museum and had requested an in-house showing. At least I had had the digital scan. I just looked that over. That's why they were there, right? And that's the reason I even had a job. I logged into the computer system and I found the file that should have had the book, but it was password protected. I had never seen that before. I went and got one of the head archivists and he scratched his head, looked worried, and then he blamed it on me. He said I must have put the password on it by accident, which I denied. He shrugged his shoulders and he told me not to worry too much about it, that he'd have the system administrator look into it. I thought about telling him about my dreams, but I didn't want to sound like a crazy person. So I just said okay and I went back to work. After the dream where he showed me the spoon, I started to get really freaked out. I called in sick and I spent the whole day researching dream phenomenon, and about lucid dreaming especially. Lucid dreaming is supposedly a skill you can develop to the point where you can not only realize you're dreaming, but you can actually control yourself in the dream. If I could control my dreams, perhaps I could make this thing in the black robe go away. Because every night he got closer and closer, and now I was afraid of what he might do when he reached me. Lucid dreaming was a skill that took a lot of practice to master, but I didn't have that kind of time. The best I could do was put myself through a crash course and look for shortcuts. The books that I had found said that the key to lucid dreaming was being able to recognize when you were dreaming. Once you were able to recognize the dream world from the real world, you could then begin changing and controlling little things, until eventually you're flying or having relations with your crush, or whatever else you wanted to happen. But that took a lot of practice. The book said that before you got there, you'd have to go through a stage where every time you recognized you were dreaming, you would immediately wake up. For most people, this was a great hurdle and a source of frustration, but to me it sounded great. If I could at least develop the ability to recognize a dream and then wake myself up, perhaps I could use it to prevent the thing in the black robe from doing whatever it wanted to do to me. I figured I already had a head start. Since my dreams were always the same, they should be much easier to recognize. My research said that I should start doing something called reality checks. These are indicators which can tell you if you're dreaming or you're actually awake. For example, changes in lighting often don't work in a dream. So if you flip your light switch or your lamp switch on and off and nothing happens, you're probably dreaming. Another reality check involves digital clocks. For whatever reason, digital clocks don't show properly in a dream. They're often blurry, obscured, or hard to read, or just blank. I thought about the 8:88 on my clock the night before and I started to think this might actually work. That night, as I lay in bed and I drifted off to sleep, I repeated in my mind over and over. The next time I'm sleeping, I will remember I'm dreaming, like the books had said to do. There's someone in my room, I'm sure of it. He's standing in the corner by the closet and he's draped in black. I sit up in bed and I switch on the lamp on the nightstand. Nothing happens. That's supposed to mean something. But what? I just can't remember. He's moving towards me now, phantom-like, his feet making no noise on the carpet. I push back against the wall behind me and I glance at the digital clock below the lamp. It reads 8:88 in solid red lines. Why can't I read the clock? Is it broken? The figure is at the foot of my bed now. In the light coming through the window, I see he is clothed in a black robe with a large hood. And the shadow falls just right so I can't see his face. He holds something up in front of him, and against my every instinct, I lean forward to get a better look. It's a spoon. A large antique spoon, rusted brownish red, its edge jagged and deteriorating. He's up on my bed now, crawling towards me, the spoon held out in front of him in his right hand. In his left, he clutches something large and rectangular, but it's obscured by shadows and I can't make it out. I'm frozen in terror. He's only a foot away now, and the spoon is inches from my face. I can see flakes of the rust and that wicked, jagged edge. The clock, the lamp, why am I thinking about them at a time like this? And now the black hood falls back from his face and he moves out of the shadow. He has no face. It's just the gleaming white bone of his skull. His mouth is an empty toothless hole. And his eyes are empty sockets. But no, not empty. There's something moving there, but it isn't eyeballs. Maggots, spiny maggots, brown and white, squirming in his eye sockets, tumbling out onto my bedsheets and onto my chest as he leans over me, and the next time I'm sleeping, I will remember I'm dreaming. The lamp, the clock. I close my eyes. I'm dreaming. This is a dream. This is a dream. This is a dream. Wake up, you're dreaming. Wake up, wake up. I wake up breathing heavy and panicky. Sweat soaks my body and my sheets. It's still dark. The clock reads 4:37. I sit up and flip the lamp switch and light fills the room. There's no one there. Just me in my empty room. It was the dream. The same dream. Except this time, he'd come closer and I'd seen him. He was human, or he had once been human, but missing his face, teeth, and his eyes. I didn't sleep anymore that night. Was this really happening to me? That thing from my dreams, it couldn't really hurt me, right? It's just a dream. That's what I told myself, but I didn't really believe. That thing was coming for me. But who would I tell? The police? They'd lock me in a loony bin. My coworkers? They're historians and scientists. No way they would believe a faceless dream monster is coming for me. A psychiatrist? Maybe, but all they would do is tell me it's just a dream, try to find the root cause. Or at the very best, just pump me full of drugs, and I wasn't sure if that would help or hurt. No, I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. But the lucid dreaming techniques had worked. I'd woken myself up, and maybe that was the key. I'd keep reading, keep researching, keep developing my dreaming skills, and perhaps I could will it away from me. That seemed to be the best course of action. I didn't do any work the next day. I spent the entire first half of the day researching the stacks for that book with no human face in it, but to no avail. I spent the second half of the day trying to guess the password to the file containing the scanned images of the book, but that didn't work either. That night, I stayed up as late as I could, but around 2:30, I found myself drifting off. So I got in bed and I reminded myself about the clock and the lamp, and then I chanted my little ritual in my head. The next time I'm dreaming, I will remember I'm dreaming. The next time I'm dreaming, I will remember. There's something in my room, I'm sure of it. He's standing in the corner by the closet, and he's draped in black. I sit up in my bed and I glance at my clock. Nothing. It's completely blank. Good, I'm dreaming. I must be getting better because I recognized it right away. I know I can wake up at any time now, but I decide not to. I decided to stay in the dream and see how much control I have. Maybe I can end this right here. He's moving towards me now, phantom-like, his feet making no noise on the carpet, but I'm no longer afraid. I let him come. He's up on my bed, crawling towards me, the spoon held out in front of him in his right hand. In his left hand, he clutches something large and rectangular, but it's draped in shadows and I can't make it out. Suddenly my courage fails and fear grips my heart. I can't help it. I start to doubt myself. So I reach over and I flip the lamp switch on just to make sure. The room explodes into light, momentarily blinding me. When my vision clears, he's right there in front of me. Hood cast black, empty jaw gaping, skull gleaming white, and rusty spoon held out before him in his right hand. And now I recognize what he holds in his left hand. It's the book. The large book with the human face inside. My mind is reeling. What is happening? My clock was blank. It must have come unplugged, or he unplugged it. But the lamp works fine. This is no dream. He's on top of me now, pushing me down on the bed. He reeks of decomposition and death like an open grave. His grip is like cold steel, and I'm frozen in shock. The jagged, rusty spoon inches towards my eye. He leans in close and whispers in my ear in a low, icy voice.
"He who has eyes, let him see."
And then the spoon plunges into my eye socket and I'm screaming. The world goes red and my right eye is in a torment of hot fire. I can hear the jagged edge of the rusty spoon scraping and grinding against the bone inside my skull, and then everything goes black. I wake up. My room is dark and I open my eyes. Nothing happens. Everything is still darkness. And then I remember everything and I'm screaming and flailing about my room, blindly searching for my phone to call 911. I spent weeks in the hospital. There was nothing they could do for me except give me painkillers while my empty eye sockets healed. When I was well enough, the police detectives started interviewing me. They can't make any sense of it. There was no sign of forced entry or foul play, no footprints and no foreign DNA. The only evidence they found was an old, rusty antique spoon which was lying on my bed covered in blood. There was no trace of my eyeballs and they asked me if I knew anything about it, and then I came clean. I told them everything about the man in the black robe in my room. And of course, I couldn't see anything, but I could hear it in the tone of their voice. They think I'm crazy. Later, I hear the nurses whispering in the hall about the nut job in room 217 who gouged his own eyes out with a rusty spoon. A few months later, I finally get out of the hospital. My home aide brings me into work to collect my belongings. Everyone feels sorry for me, and I use that to convince the chief archivist to help me look through the computer system one last time. He pulls up the file, and this time, I guess the password on the first try. It was, "He who has eyes, let him see." The file opens, and I can hear the archivist gasp as he clicks through the pages, and I make him describe to me what he sees. The book is in Latin, which the archivist studied in grad school. It's the account of a witch trial in Germany during the 1500s. Actually, a warlock trial to be more accurate, but the victim was a male. The event was seen as unique because, when confronted with the accusations, the accused immediately admitted to the charges and was sentenced to death by torture. After many hours of torture, including the use of the Hedrick's fork and breaking on the wheel, he still refused to recant and to ask for absolution. Instead, he fought against the name of God and he proclaimed a curse. Anyone who touched his corpse would be cursed to suffer the rest of his life, and that one day the warlock himself would be made whole again and walk the earth in corporeal form, to take revenge on the descendants of those who had tortured and killed him. And then his teeth were yanked from his mouth, one by one. His eyes were gouged out and his face was cut off with a paring knife, before he finally succumbed to his wounds. His body was tossed in an open pit in the forest outside of town, and his corpse was left unburied and open to the elements. No one mourned him aside from one person, his young daughter. They were a poor family of little means, so she honored her father in the only way she could. She tossed her most valuable possession into the grave with him, a steel spoon. I asked for copies of the book pages and the archivist obliged. Later, with the help of my home aide, I did my own research on occurrences in the town during the years following the execution. There were no more mentions of the warlock's daughter, but many strange events were recorded. Outbreaks of madness and hysteria were unusually high in the following years, and those afflicted often claimed that they'd seen a spectral man in a black robe walking the town at night. Rumors also spread concerning the pit in which the warlock's corpse had been disposed of. Apparently someone had filled in the pit, and when the villagers dug it up, it was found to be empty. Eventually, I also discovered the fates of the two executioners who had carried out the torture on the warlock. Both were later found murdered, one missing all of his teeth and the other missing the skin from his face. And there is no mention of the book. Since I can obviously no longer type, I posted my story here using diction software for one reason: to warn you. I hardly sleep anymore, no more than 1 or 2 hours a night, and I fear to dream, because in the waking world I am blind. But at night, in my dreams, I still see. I see through my eyes become his eyes, And every time I sleep, I see blood and death and murder. He is complete again. And now he stalks at night in a black hooded robe, taking revenge on the descendants of those who wronged him.